Play at Novibet.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle on Jump To It, sponsored by Novibet. This week we're going to take a slight turn from what we normally do. We're normally looking back at the past week and things that happened in it, but this week, because not a whole lot happened last week particularly. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick our horses to follow for Cheltenham mainly, but the National Hunt season in general. So we're going to pick 5 horses each, myself, Emma and Johnny. Emma, Johnny, welcome to the show.
Hi, Vinny.
Now this should be fun. Emma, I presume your 5 will all be Willie Mullins, because you were down there during the week at his press open day for the start of the National Hunt season. You saw some serious talent down there.
Yeah, I was trying to spread it out as much as I could, but when you're kind of listing the horses, I think I made a list going down to Willie's, and we were kind of rattling off names, and I think he was after talking about over 60 horses, so we said we better leave him off now. He's after doing enough. So yeah, I mean, you could make a list of 20 Willie Mullins horses to follow, even that mightn't be massive names that are exciting. So I tried to spread it out as much as I could anyway.
Great stuff. And what about him, Johnny? Is he going to win everything at Cheltenham next March? Just looking back, he'd 6 last year, or last season, he had 6 winners, but he'd 10 the previous year. They seem to think he's a serious amount of good horses this time round. With the exception of Energamine, they all seem to be fit, well and healthy. So he could literally take Cheltenham by storm in March, could he?
He absolutely could, yeah. Like, it was interesting. I think Willie Mullins is obviously going to be dominant. Nicky Henderson in a recent stable tour seemed to suggest he's some nice young horses coming up. And I think we badly need that as well. We need some competition. But, like, I mean, I've 5 horses to follow today. 4 of them are trained by Willie Mullins. And I was like, am I doing the wrong thing here? But honestly, that's the way it feels. It's just like the strength and depth he has is quite colossal. And like, it's amazing, Vinny. When I get into racing, like, you celebrate an Irish winner. Now you just expect them to dominate, and when you expect them to dominate, you expect Willie Mullins to dominate, and I can't see it being much different this season.
Yeah, I can remember far enough back to when one Irish winner was celebrated in a big way, because we didn't think we'd get one.
Galmoy.
It's a funny game, isn't it, the way it's changed? Now we're looking at the fact that if Willie Mullins doesn't have half a dozen, he's had a disaster, I suppose. Look, we'll get stuck into it. Plenty to go through, and we're going to have 15 horses in total. So who wants to start? Emma, do you want to go with your 5 first?
Yeah, I can do. I won't rattle on too long. But
so
my
the big
first one
question now is how many of us will have the same horses? From 15 horses, how many of them will be in all 3? So this will be interesting now.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there might be 1 or 2 now in mind that could be in a couple of lists. The first one isn't. It's maybe a little bit predictable. Mirazur West, I think, for Willie Mullins.
There's one.
He didn't actually. Yeah, he was. I saw him in his point to point in Drumahane, and I just thought he was nice. He was actually kind of surprising when he didn't give him a massive mention, but I think Patrick had given him a big talking up in another stable tour a week or 2 before, so I wouldn't be too worried about it. But I saw him winning his point to point. He didn't win his point to point. Sorry, he fell at the last in his point to point. But I just remember he was running that day, and I was keeping a kind of a close eye on him, because I think there was like stories of, he's a full brother of Fernie Hollow, obviously, and there were stories about Fernie Hollow as a young horse being very, very hard to handle. But this fella seems to have a totally different temperament. In fairness, he seemed very, very tractable that day, and I think David Casey commented after he won his bumper that he's kind of a bit nicer horse to deal with, I'd say, than Fernie. So he showed a fair turn of foot in the point to point that day. He kind of quickened away from them after the second last. He was unlucky to fall at the last, but won his bumper, went well then for Willie, and I'd be very, very surprised if he wasn't one of the kind of main protagonists for the Supreme Hurdle this year. I'd say he's probably a real 2-miler. If I was to guess at this stage, it's obviously very early, but that's what I'd have him down as at the moment anyway. The second one I'll give then, I'll move away a small bit from Willie Mullins. It's a 5-year-old filly from Gavin Cromwell's yard. Bioluminescence is her name. She's by Walk in the Park. She won a 4-year-old maiden point to point in Boulta around this time last year for Gavin himself. I had actually done a stable tour at Gavin's a couple of weeks before that point to point, I think, and he picked her out as maybe a dark horse, even back that far ago. I think they had the name picked out by the kids and they were keeping it for a good horse. I think that's what he was saying about her. So she won her point to point. I think she was sold to JP then shortly after that. Ran in a bumper then in Limerick for Gavin, second behind Junta Marvel, who franked the form again in Punchestown. So that's quite good form. She looked quite keen that day as well, and she wouldn't really be a typical bumper type. She's a big, massive, kind of imposing type of mare. She could be a real one for maybe a mare's novice hurdle or something at the Cheltenham Festival. But she'd probably a chaser in time. But she'd be one that would kind of excite me now. I'm looking forward to seeing her coming out next time. I'll go for another Mullins then, but it'll be Emmett. I think Corbetts Cross will have a massive year this year. Does anyone else have him? I'm wondering. He's probably,
I don't actually.
Not after I saw him run out at the last in Cheltenham. That put me off him.
I know. I actually had him. I did a stable tour with Eugene. Just I think it was the week he was actually after being sold to Emmett, and I backed him for Cheltenham after that. And oh god, when he ran out at the last year, really, it was sick. But I think he could have a massive year this year. Just the way he ran in Cheltenham that day. I think probably the most impressive thing he did last year was winning that 2-mile hurdle for Emmett first start out. I mean, like thinking about this horse, you would have thought that he was kind of a slow 3-mile chaser, but kind of proved everyone wrong that day, and showed a real turn of foot. So he obviously has a bit of speed and he stays, so that's kind of a deadly enough combination, I think. You'd imagine he'd be probably one for the RSA this year, though. Like he stays so well, and he'll be a good jumper as well coming from Eugene. So he obviously won a point to point. So yeah, I think he could be one of the top staying novice chasers this year. So I'll keep him on my list. You wouldn't actually probably rule out a chance of the Grand National even. Would he try it with him? He did it with Noble Yates.
Emmett, he could go for a champion hurdle with him. You'd never know what Emmett he'd go for, would you? Yeah.
It's very hard to predict his targets when Emmett's training him, but I think he'll win plenty of big races this year anyway. I'll go back to Willie Mullins then for the next one. Blood Destiny. He was kind of being rumoured coming up to the Triumph Hurdle that this fella actually might be the better of the Mullins pair. Obviously didn't transpire like that in the end, but I'd probably forgive him for that run. In fairness, he totally blew up on the day. I'd say the occasion got the better of him. And I was actually interesting. He wasn't in the lot that we saw riding out now, but his box was beside Gallopin des Champs, and I went over and had a look at him, and I'd say he's still very, very babyish. He was just whinnying mad when this horse was walking around the yard, and fences might make a man of him, I'd say. And it's kind of Willie wouldn't normally send a 4-year-old chasing, but I think like even from his very first run in Mallow that day, he always kind of jumped hurdles like a chaser, and he's a big kind of strapping type of horse. So I'd say he might have a hard time in the Arkle division now with Marine Nationale, but probably no reason why he couldn't go 2.5 miles either. Trying to guess which one he'd go for now at this stage would be tough, but I think he'll probably be a better horse over fences. And like Willie sounded quite keen on him. Apparently he does very, very good work at home, and like if they can just get that kind of babyishness out of him, I'd say he could be a proper grade 1 horse, but they were kind of expecting him to be last year. The last one I have now, I had these ready last week, and this horse ran on the Sunday and kind of disappointed me a bit, but I said I'd leave him in there anyway because he'd probably win something if I took him out of it. So it's Walk Away Harry from the Charles Burns Yard. He's a 5-year-old gelding by Walk in the Park. He won a very good bumper at the Punchestown Festival last year. He just looks like a dour stare. I was having him in the list as maybe one for the 3-mile, the Albert Bartlett at the Cheltenham Festival, but after his maiden hurdle run, I'd imagine he'd probably be going down the handicap route more so than that way. But he's got the action of a horse who loves heavy ground, so that's why I thought Limerick would have suited him mad that day, but it didn't for whatever reason. But he just looked very green in these bumpers. Even when the day he won in Punchestown, he just kept on galloping to the line. The form of that bumper worked out really well as well, and ties in with some of the real top bumper horses last year. I think Irish Panther, who was behind him that day, who had a massive reputation from Henry de Bromhead's yard. He was also second. I think he was second to Ballyburn and Factify last year as well. So like that's really strong bumper form, I would think. So look, maybe he won't be going for one of the grade 1 one of the grade 1 novice hurdles, but I'd be keeping an eye on him in a handicap definitely.
Good stuff. Nice 5. I think I might go next because I have none of yours. So I'll go with mine, and then we'll see how many Johnny has matched up with us. So I've started off basically with what I think are 2 winners at Cheltenham. First one is Nationale, Barry Connell. We all know this horse, still unbeaten, 2 bumpers, 3 hurdles. Most impressive when beating Facile Vega in the Supreme Novice Hurdle. Goes novice chasing. Look at the Arkle, looks the obvious, though I wouldn't be surprised if he stepped them up a bit and trip at some point. But Nationale, very good horse. Think it'll be thereabouts all season in all the top races. Next one then is El Fabiolo, Willie Mullins. Have to stick in one of his, I suppose. Champion Chase is the race that's been geared for. Of course, last year's winner, Energamine, is out for the season, so that makes it a little bit easier for El Fabiolo, which won the Arkle last year. It's only been beaten once in its life. That was when it finished the next second to John Bon on its first run of the season. That was at Aintree a year ago. And it turned that form around completely, of course, in the Arkle when it beat John Bon by 5.5 lengths. John Bon at this stage looks the most likely danger in a Champion Chase and should be no danger. So if all things go smoothly for El Fabiolo during the season, I'd expect that to be a winner in Cheltenham as well. And then I've gone a little bit haywire for the next 3. So my third one is Emmett Mullins, the Shunter. Very interesting horse, this. It's 10 rising 11, but I think this could still be a Cheltenham Festival win in this somewhere along the way. He goes and JP McManus bought this horse after the horse had won at Cheltenham in 2021. Was owned by Paul Byrne at the time, sold to JP for good money, no doubt, as an 8-year-old. Is now, as I say, rising 11. Before it won the Cesarewitch a couple of weeks ago, it had only won 1 race for JP McManus, which was a maiden in Sligo on the flat. So they're playing the long game here, I think. And I think it'll be back to Cheltenham come March. What race is the question? The horse is rated 150 over fences, 140 over hurdles. You'd be thinking maybe hurdles. Which hurdle race did they go for? They've run in the Coral Cup before. Stayers Hurdle maybe is a step too far for a horse at that age. So the Pertemps is the obvious one. But they're going to have to hide him in the Pertemps, or his rating's going to go up. So it'll be interesting to see how they campaign him during the season. But I do think the Shunter, there's one more big one left in him. Hopefully it'll be in March at Cheltenham. My 4th one then, really odd one here. I doubt anyone will have this, but then again, you never know, Johnny. Tiger Bay Queen, trained by Peter Fahey. This, I think, will go for the Mayor's Novice Hurdle in Cheltenham. That'll be my plan for it anyway. Won a listed bumper on its second start at Fairyhouse in April by 7 lengths. Interesting horse that won yesterday called Miss Augusta, a Gigginstown horse of Gordon Elliott's. It beat that 7 lengths in that listed bumper back in April in Fairyhouse, since being bought by JP McManus. The more you look at this as well, Emma, you were down in Willie Mullins' the other day. I can't believe how many of his top horses are now owned by JP McManus. And everywhere you look, there's JP McManus, the Shunter, Tiger Bay Queen. You had one of yours as well, or a couple of them are JP McManus's, I think, as well. So anyway, he's not giving up, not retiring from the ownership stakes at this stage. So what's interesting about this Peter Fahey filly, Tiger Bay Queen, is when she did win, it's the quotes from Peter Fahey that have me excited. He was saying when she won that day that last October she ran in a schooling hurdle at Tipperary, and in his own words, she genuinely won it by a hurdle. And then, as well as that, he also said she's very, very good and is different gravy over a hurdle. So I can't wait to see this filly over hurdles. JP McManus has bought her. Obviously, they think big things here. So it'll be interesting to see what she does and when she comes out. Month back, first time out, I would have thought. And then my last one is, it turns out that 4 of mine are already festival winners at Cheltenham. And the last one is Maskada, a mare trained by Henry de Bromhead. She won at Cheltenham Festival last year. She absolutely hacked up in the Grand Annual. Won it in a canter. Rated 150 now, so I'm thinking the Mayor's Chase would look the obvious target, particularly as I think last year's winner Impervious is out for the season, so that opens the door a little bit there as well, so it mightn't be too much to take her on. I'd be fancying her. She's 16-1, I think, for that at the minute. Tiger Bay Queen is something similar for that Mayor's Novice, so decent prices. The Shunter, no betting yet for any of the big handicaps, but you'd never know, and the other 2 are relatively short, Nationale and El Fabiolo. So that's my 5. Johnny, have you any of them?
I have one, yeah. I'm going to go in alphabetical order here. The first one I'm going to go with is Fact to File, who, despite the fact that he was actually second in the Cheltenham bumper last year, probably hasn't been, I I suppose, lauded as one of these big kind of hopes for Willie Mullins, because he's probably, I guess, because he's lost his last couple of races. But both of them were obviously behind a dream to share. And I think what's fascinating about him is that he's gone novice chasing, according to Willie Mullins' stable tour, as a 6-year-old going on 7. And we mentioned Emmett Mullins. I think a lot of horses just waste their time going hurdling. I don't really see the point of it if you're like this horse, a point-to-point winner. He is 6 going on 7, and I think wisely, whoever made the decision, they're going chasing with him, and that's really interesting. Obviously, I think they'll try to avoid Nationale in. At Cheltenham. I'd say he might be more of a sort of a 2.5 mile horse, but he was a very, very good horse last year. Willie seems to think a lot of him. I don't think there was any kind of shame in finishing second to JP's other horse, Dream Share, in the 2 bumpers, and just that profile. I think it's really interesting that they're doing that with him. So my second horse is also trained by Willie Mullins, and that's Lossiemouth. And I suppose she's kind of an obvious one, really, with a view to the Mare's Hurdle at Cheltenham. I think she's pretty backable price, really. Like, I really can't see her taking on, one of the greatest hurlers of our time at all, really. I actually think the 2 mile hurling division is going to be pretty boring this year. I think, you'll have Constitution Hill beating everything, and the Irish race is kind of basically Willie Mullins' lap of honours, and whatever he runs them. Obviously, State managed to stay hurling, which is quite interesting. I think Willie took that decision because he's like probably the best that there is in Ireland, and that he doesn't have to take on Constitution Hill except at Cheltenham when finishing second isn't the end of the world. But Lossiemouth and Stateman, will they clash? I'm not really sure how that's going to work out, but I thought the performance of Zarak the Brave to win the Galway Hurdle at his age was really, really impressive, and Lossiemouth basically travelled all over him at Punchestown, and she just looked very, very good, and I think the Mare's Hurdle is definitely hers for the taking. Now, my next one, alphabetical order, is Majborough. So I'm getting my alphabetical order mixed up here. So Majborough is, I was looking up Equinox today, who's basically probably the best horse in the world. It's by a Japanese stallion I didn't know much about. This horse is also by a Japanese stallion, and I wasn't at Willie's now for the stable visit that the journalist had last week, but this horse won in France, and he really seems to think a lot of him. He's going to be a juvenile hurdler, but like a bit like Blood Destiny last season, he's not like one of these flatbred horses to go juvenile hurdling. He already has experience, kind of has a pedigree that'll probably suggest he'll be a long-term sort of jumps prospect. And I just thought for the 4-year-old division, the way Willie spoke about him, the way he won, and the form seems quite solid. He's winning France. He's very interesting. My next one is the same as Emma, Mirazur West. I actually mentioned him in a couple of WhatsApp groups that I was putting him in here, and it was pointed out that the Naas form maybe isn't that great, but like the fact that this horse starts in a point-to-point, as Emma mentioned, the fact that he, basically with that pedigree, you wouldn't really fancy Fernie Hollow in a 3 mile race now. You'd have to say he's very, very strong. And this fella, who's obviously his brother, he just does seem a bit more sort of amenable to doing what the jockey kind of wants you to do, and that's a big part of racing. And I know it's kind of hard to judge at Naas, but he was sent off 1 to 2, absolutely cantered through the race. I think he finished the race quite well visually. That was my impression anyway. And I think he's going to be a fascinating type for whether he'll go supreme or maybe step up and trip to Ballymore. I'm not really sure, but he's definitely a fascinating type going forward. And I am really excited to see him jumping a hurdle, because I think over sort of 2 miles jumping hurdles, he'll be pretty relaxed. And I'll just get my last one up here. So my last one is... So I've Factifile. Nationale is my last one. Sorry, so I might have missed my alphabetical order here, but Nationale, I think the fact that I'd say Barry Conlon was just praying that Constitution Hill didn't go chasing this year, and Nationale is go chasing. I remember him telling me in Downpatrick this summer that he was go chasing, and at the time he was 5-1 for the Arkle, and I was saying to a few lads, I think the way this is looking, this is going to be a great bet. Unfortunately, I didn't have that bet, but in any event, I really like this horse. Just think he's loads of gears, shouldn't be an issue at all jumping the fence, and I think the Arkle is his for the taking. So 4 horses trained by Willie Mullins, 1 that isn't, but I guess that's how it is these days.
Yeah, what's interesting.
Willie actually gave Majborough, I did a 1-to-1 interview, and he gave Majborough as his dark horse for the season, so I'd say that's probably a good enough show.
Yeah, it was interesting what he said about Majborough in that piece you did with him, that he was saying the horse looks like a 5-year-old, which is very interesting, isn't it? Says really big, strong horse, and he was saying not just as one to follow for this season, but probably for the season after and the season after that. So that's very strong stuff from Willie around one of his. Yeah, I like some of yours. That fact to file is very interesting, Johnny. Willie, in his stable tour he did with Emma as well, he was talking about the fact that this chasing had been the plan before the horse went to running bumpers at all last season. That the bumpers are just a way of wasting time, more or less, till he goes over fences. That the hurdling wasn't going to be an option really for him. So that's a very interesting horse too. Look, we've got winners in there somewhere. We obviously haven't got the best horse in training in there. None of us went for Constitution Hill, but sure, why would you? At the sort of prices he is, there's no point in picking the likes of him. And we've no English trained runners in it, but then again, it is an Irish show, so come on, you have to give us some leeway there, because obviously we're going to pick Irish horses. That's what it's all about, and I think we've picked some good ones. I hope so. Anyway, I think Nationale, I like him, no doubt about it. I like Fact to File, El Fabiolo. There's lots of them in there, isn't there? Corbetts Cross, really interesting horse, but where it goes. And again, my other one of Emmett Mullins is the Shunter. Could be anything, could be anywhere. You'd never know where it might turn up. Mightn't even be on a racetrack. Could be somewhere else. But there you go. That's all our horses. And we'll put up a list now at the end to show you them all in alphabetical order for Johnny as well. And that's it. So subscribe to our channel and do gamble responsibly if you are placing bets on any horses. And we'll see you all again next week. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.